but otherwise we might make a start. So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our Get Exam Ready workshop. So what we're really going to be kind of going through today is a lot of kind of general tips, whether it be how to, time management, whether you should be studying content or exams, a bit of motivational things as well, especially at this time, about a month out, as well as a large chunk of it with English. And we've got Mahde, our 50 and Premier's Award English expert here to guide us through that. So hopefully will be really, really useful 2 hours, and also heaps of time for Q&A to, unmute, have a chat. And yeah, we'll try our best to answer your questions as best as possible. So before we start, all you know about us is just that some of us don't like mandarins, some of us like apples, and some of us have trust issues in terms of TV shows. But who are we? Just quickly, my name is Yusuf. I'm in my 3rd year of medicine at Melbourne. I did a Bachelor of Science before that. So I'm technically 6th year of uni, which is scary to think. But I've been at Happy Brain for pretty much since my 1st year of uni. I was a tutor, and now I'm one of the tutoring directors. And yeah, was fortunate enough to get a 99.75 back in the days at school. But more than happy to, jump on these webinars and just have a nice casual chat about, what worked for us, what didn't work. And yeah, just kind of give you some of the wisdom, or not, I wouldn't call it wisdom from myself, but just some of the tips and tricks that I would have liked to have known at your stage a month before my exams. So that's hopefully what we can offer. Otherwise, I'll handball to Rafiq.
Hello everyone, my name is Rafiq. I'm a 3rd year student at Monash. I study actuarial science and business statistics and economics. So I'm a full package, but only in commerce. I graduated in 2018, the 99.7. I went to the same school as Yusuf at Springvale. And I've been at Happy Brain again since my 1st year. I was the student first, and then Yusuf thought it was a great idea to let me on these webinars and take some responsibility. So here I am. But it's been really fun, and I love doing these, to be honest. So yeah, I'm very excited. Mahde?
Yep, beautiful to hear that, Rafiq and Yusuf. My name is Mahde Halab. I'm in my 1st year of law at Monash University. I'm really keen on doing this workshop for you all. I believe most of you all are in year 12, so it's pretty, intensive time. The main focus, I guess, I want to provide for you guys, and I think all the other participants here, or all the other speakers here have equal expertise, but I want to be providing some help with regards to English and how to approach your studies in relation to the upcoming impending exam. I'll pass over the mic to Teba.
Thanks, Mahde. Hello, everyone. My name is Teba. I'm in my final semester, hopefully, doing a double degree in biomedicine and engineering, the weirdest combination you can hear about, but hoping to continue and pursue the engineering pathway. I went to Sirius College in 2016, 2016 graduate, and have been with Happy Brain for a few years, started as a mentor and taken a few roles, and now leading as CEO. So really, really excited for this workshop, and really excited to happy to see some familiar names as well. Yeah, move it back to you, Yusuf.
Awesome. But yeah, guys, honestly, anytime, any questions, chuck them in the chat, unmute. Yeah, we don't take ourselves too seriously here. So yeah, no, looking forward to, our time together. So we've got kind of a couple general themes we want to talk to. As I mentioned, they're mainly around kind of time management, whether you should go content or exams, a fair bit of talk about English, as well as a big phase of Q&A available as well. So let's jump straight in to just quickly who we are, because on the poll, I think about majority of you actually haven't heard of us. So at Happy Brain, just quickly, we're a non-profit organization that looks to empower youth through education and mentoring. The way we started was there was a boy named Hussein who'd come from Iraq overseas, and he required open heart surgery, but obviously didn't have Medicare and things like that. So through fundraising as well as tutoring profits, the founders, who none of us are founders, were able to raise that kind of money, and they thought, we've got a pretty cool thing going on here. Why don't we continue it? So they started these classes in initially Broadmeadows, but also Noble Park. And then now we've since moved online, but with the mission to provide high quality, affordable tutoring. So that's who we are at Happy Brain. And yeah, we're all volunteers, just trying to impart a bit of that mentorship and tutoring that we wish we had when we were in your shoes. So bear with us, and hopefully you guys take home a thing or two from this webinar. So we're gonna kick off with our first theme, which will be led by Rafiq as holding the mic.
Awesome. All right. And just to clarify, I'm not leading this because I'm the best at time management. I'm the worst at time management, which is why you're going to hear a lot from the other three, because they're all legends. So there's kind of a few areas, I think, when we think about motivation and time management. But for me, and as I hear a lot, and I think the more important is these days is about scheduling, right? It's like you have to have a plan as to what you're going to do. So now in lockdown, how do you guys think that we should kind of schedule our days, or what are some tips that you might have to make sure that we're kind of making the most of our 16 hours a week? Right?
Yeah, happy to jump in first. I guess before jumping into time management, it's really important to just recognize that this is like a unique and special time in your, I guess, high school academic journey. It's the last stretch, the last 6 weeks. And so just acknowledging that because it's just the last, you're so close towards the end, committing that, you know, pushing yourself a little bit further, whether it's 10% or 20% further. Again, acknowledging that is the last stretch, and before planning and doing all of that, commit to to pushing yourself a little bit further. In terms of the time management aspect itself, I can talk about the strategies that work for me, and everybody's going to have different strategies that work for themselves. For me, I think the biggest thing was planning, and I can't, I guess, highlight that enough. Right around this time, I guess back when I was in year 12, I pulled out a big calendar and started writing down everything that I wanted to accomplish in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And so that's listed all the practice exams that I've got for all of the subjects, and said, okay, well, I want X number of SACs. I want to complete an X number of SACs for further, X number of SACs for biology, or X number of SACs for chemistry, whatever it is. And then I kind of worked backward from there. So I'd planned out week by week, so what I wanted to accomplish each week, and then going a step further, planning out the night before. So planning day by day, but the night before. That's really, really important for me, planning out my day the night before, and recognizing, you hear all of these things where about we can make infinite number of decisions, but we can make limited number of good decisions. And so planning out the night before is a really helpful strategy to make sure that you wake up, you're focused, you're aligned with your goals. Whenever I didn't have a plan or schedule of the day, it's when I opened myself up for opportunities for procrastination, or opportunities for, sorry, my Slack is just going off, more likely to procrastinate and delay my studies. In terms of the day-to-day, I guess, planning itself, what works for me, and I still continue to do that, is a strategy called calendar blocking, which I'm not sure if some of you have heard about it. Essentially, there's two ways of going about it. Some people who like to plan out their day hour by hour and saying, hey, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., I want to get my chemistry SAC done. I want to get my chemistry prac exam done. For me, that felt very limiting, and it put me in a stressful situation because sometimes I wouldn't tick that box off, and then I would just feel overwhelmed. So instead of kind of tackle the calendar blocking strategy, what that means is I would allocate a certain amount of my day towards a particular subject, and next to me I'll have a to-do list. And in that allocated amount of time, I'll try to tick off as many things or as little things as I can without feeling guilty that, oh, I've only ticked 2, I've ticked 5, but rather just blocking a certain amount of time and really focusing on that particular subject. And I guess to that, before I can hand it to the others, really important to recognize what your attention span is as well. That's something, a bit of a harsh reality that I had to come in reality with. You see some students who can study 10 hours or 5 hours non-stop, which is really great and really inspiring to see. But I'm definitely not that person. My attention span is definitely shorter than that. So recognizing what that is, for me, I had to start with 25 to 5 minutes break. I know there's a Pomodoro method that many use, which is really helpful for me. But yeah, planning the night before and realizing where your attention span is, as I guess some of the strategies that I use from a time management point of view. Maybe what with Mahde, Yusuf, what do you guys do? I'm keen to know as well. I think, yeah, time management doesn't stop at year 12. It's definitely useful long after that.
Yeah, definitely. I think we all have different strategies, and I love these webinars because we pick up on each other's skills as well. So I think I'm going to take away some of that time blocking and things. Probably the biggest thing I wish I'd learned during year 12, which I didn't, it was more so during uni that I learned, was if you work out how long things take you, it can really alleviate a lot of stress. So for example, you can look at your to-do list and you're like, oh my God, I've got, an essay to write, a practice exam to do. I want to review this. I want to do that. I want to go for a walk. I want to call a friend. Got all these things I need to do. It's just not going to happen. But if you then just kind of roughly, and it does take a bit of experience to kind of work out how much time these things take you. But if you know, especially with year 12 and practice exams, they've got really discrete time limits. So that's really useful. So it's like, okay, my essay, I want to finish it in an hour if you're starting to write to time at that stage. Or I want to finish my biology practice exam in 2.5 hours, and I want to do a further maths practice exam that's an hour and a half. It's like, okay, I've got 5 hours of work, but I've got 10 hours at a day. So that's actually not too bad. So if you know that you, as Teba mentioned, you're going to block out a certain amount of time later on, and you know how long something's going to take you, then hopefully you can be rest assured that when that time comes, you can get that discrete, hour and a half task done then. And that way it's not really playing on your mind for the rest of the day, thinking I have all these different things to do. Once you've kind of worked out how long things take you and you kind of scheduled them in, then you can kind of rest easy. Obviously, the next part, and I think Matthew's going to touch on this, is kind of discipline of actually making sure you get those things done. And that's probably the next level to it. But just working out how long things take you can be really a big thing to alleviate your stress. And definitely what I totally agree with what Teba mentioned in terms of planning out your day the night before, making sure you get up on time. That's often was a big thing for me, actually waking up at the right time. If you live with others, I would always get, unashamedly, my mum, my brother, anyone, just like bang the door down, make sure I'm up. Otherwise, I know I'm sleeping until 12 o'clock. I would always have a shower straight up in the morning, just kind of get fresh, and then try and smash out my first kind of block of work. But yeah, definitely planning the night before, and also scheduling in your breaks, because you're like, oh, I'm going to study all morning. Can't really do that. So having little blocks to get, that you're working towards. All right, I'm going to work for, let's say, this 90 minutes. I'm going to work towards. After that 90 minutes, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to play basketball. I used to watch Avatar: Last Airbender during my exam period. Like, that was my thing. That was my reward. I'm like, if I work for 90 minutes or 2 hours, I can then watch a 20-minute episode. That was my thing. But then within that big block, I'd have a smaller block of going downstairs, getting a glass of water. And that would be like my little kind of refresher as well. So I think planning the night before, planning your breaks, and knowing how long things take you were the big things for me. Mahde, let's say I've scheduled out my day. I'm motivated. I've got this whole list of things to do. I sit in my chair, and then, not really feeling it, might reach my phone, and then suddenly I feeling bad that I'm not getting work done, but also I'm not really enjoying being on my phone because I know I shouldn't be, and it's just a bad time. Any advice for discipline?
Alrighty. So I just want to begin by saying the responses that we've seen so far, absolutely imperative, take those on board. Now, human beings, we work off of urgency, okay? You know, you notice that somehow you get things done once a deadline gets closer. So I'd say a really, really powerful thing that I tried to implement was artificial deadlines. So actually making a deadline like really far back before your actual sort of assessment. Let's say the assessment, hypothetically speaking, is on the 15th of October. I'd set it 5 days from now. And that understanding that it's 5 days from now will force you, especially based off our disposition for urgency, will force you to just work hard. Like maybe you won't be prepared in those 5 days, but you will definitely be much more prepared had you not set that 5-day artificial barrier. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, so we're going to work off this idea that human beings are based off urgency, is to set yourself a highlight of the day. So I guess because it's really good to set down time limits for things to get done. But at the end of the day, when you want to get that exam done, we want to finish off our tasks, right? Once we get our tasks done, then we know we're ready for our exam. So having like a highlight of the day, like for example, today's my English day. Today, I'm going to make sure I smash out a couple of essays, for example. Or today is my mathematics day. I'm going to smash out further maths, special maths, and you set down like big task blocks, and you can probably spend most of your time doing that. That's something that I found has been really helpful, especially when it comes to scheduling your day. I've noticed that scheduling breaks is pretty cool. And scheduling breaks is pretty cool because if you don't schedule your breaks, as we've all realized, and I've had to find out the hard way, of course, you'll end up just impinging on all your other study times, and basically your day's stuffed. And another thing that really helps with discipline, but especially scheduling your day, is as I think Teba mentioned, was the Pomodoro Technique. But for me personally, I found 45 minutes on, 5 minutes off is pretty helpful. But just adding another layer to that, maybe even popping on a Zoom call with some of your friends and chucking on a 45-minute timer, it's pretty helpful because first of all, everyone has their cameras on, yeah? So when you're studying for your subject, you see everyone else's faces, you know who's concentrating and who's not. You can just unmute yourself and be like, hey, go concentrate. Stop slacking off. I see you. And in that 5-minute break, you actually really cherish it because you can discuss what you've got, what you've finished, what you've gotten done. And you get this like urgency, this boost to keep going for the entire day.
Well, just awesome tips all around. I didn't know some of them, but I would have loved to have known them when I was in high school. But it's okay, I'll steal them now. I also just wanted to jump in and say a few things because I am neither a good time manager or very disciplined. And what I found is really helpful for me in year 12 was, like Mahdi was saying, like you've got friends around you and you're all doing BCE, right? So you can pull each other up, you know what I mean? And so what I found was, for me, social media was really a really rough one, because you're just sort of on it and then you're like, I'll just be on it for 5 minutes, and then it's 30 minutes, and then it's an hour, and you're like, it's already like 5 p.m. or something. Luckily for me, like I was the maths guy at school. So whenever I would go on social media, somebody would message me asking me a question. And so wherever I went, it was sort of like, you can't escape methods or further, or chemistry or something. And I found that really helpful because it sort of keeps you, you're sort of straying away from the path, and then your friend's like, yo, wait a minute, it's time to get back. So those are my final thoughts on motivation and time management, and I'll hand it off to Yusuf so we can talk about content and practice exams.
Just before that, actually, I just want to jump in with Mahdi's and Rafiq's advice about studying with friends. I never did that in year 12, and that's probably one of the biggest regrets. I'm doing it much more now, even at work. If I'm working or if, exam studying, I just put a calendar invite and send to a couple of friends, and we do study sessions, and it's the most concentrated and focused I ever. I mean, I like to study around people, but it's such a good advice. And if you feel like, I know some students say that maybe they're friends will distract them. If you feel like that's the case, there are some good YouTube videos where it's like a study with me YouTube video, and I've used that. I think that's really helpful as well. So no, I just want to echo what Rafiq and Mahdi said as well.
Yeah, no, I agree in terms of it can go two ways. You can either have the friends who just don't stop talking and you get nothing done. But in those situations, you always have your mute button and you just like put mute, you know, hey guys, like I really need to get some work done. And if you like open up and you're like, I'm actually really worried, I need to get some work done, then people often should respect that. But yeah, I've actually been doing that every Monday. Every Monday I'm not at uni, we have research day, and it's just very, very hard to get motivated writing research papers. But another friend of mine's also writing a research paper, and we get on a Zoom call every Monday at 9 o'clock, and that's just our thing. So yeah, I've only kind of tapped into that 6 years out of school, but finally doing it. Cool. So this is, I guess, the age-old question that especially right now, you know, September school holidays is, you know, a bit of the time when the trigger gets switched and, you know, like, oh my goodness, it's close to the real thing. I really need to kind of buckle down. And those were kind of my memories of September school holidays. It was just, you know, a lot of work. But the age-old question is, you're feeling like, let's say biology, you know, you're feeling like you're not confident enough in the content to then do a practice exam and get questions wrong. You don't want to, you don't want to face your fears. So should I actually, you know, go and hit the books a little bit, read up a little bit on it, and then go do my practice exam? Or should I just, you know, bite the bullet and go just straight for the practice exam and then see how we go? So Rafiq, I'll pass the mic on to you, but yeah, everyone talks about doing practice exams, but I don't feel confident yet in my content. Shall I do some study first?
I totally understand that. I'll say, like, out of my personal experience, I had a really good teacher. So for at least one of my subjects, I was really confident long before the exam time. So I'm not going to talk about that, but there were plenty of other subjects where I thought it was kind of worthless to be doing practice exams when you sort of don't know anything, right? But even having a look, at least now you should have done most of the content, right? So even now, just having a look through the exams and seeing questions and going like, I know what that is. I can do this question, and then doing it. And then you see the next question and you have no idea what's going on. Then you can be like, oh, I have no idea what that is. Maybe I should figure out what that is, right? So even if you think, oh, I don't know 50% of the content, right? You can confirm what that 50% is just by going through the practice exams. And on top of confirming what it is, you can say, well, this is the stuff I need to work on. I can say that for science and maths subjects, that practice exams are your guide to acing the exam, which is not surprising. But I think it's a little bit harder to study from them from the humanities and English, which I'll let Mahdi talk about a little bit later. But on top of that, what I see a lot of people doing when they do exams is they do the exam and they're like, yeah, I did it. And then they just throw it in the bin or something. It's really, really important. Like, you have to acknowledge that 80%, I think, of the worth of that exam comes from you marking it. If it's like a humanities or an English, right? Even if you get it right, you can say, oh, what are some other ways I can discuss this? What are some different perspectives I can think about? Maths and science, obviously a little bit different. So you get it wrong or you don't get it. You get it wrong or you don't get it wrong, right? But even then, it's a 5-marker question. You can say, these are the points I missed. This is what I should be working on. Things like that. So don't underestimate even like just one practice exam. If you take, for example, the practice exam from 2019, right, before the COVID one, even just doing that one practice exam, you can see, I know this is what the examiners want. I know this is how they're going to ask the questions. Once you look at the examiner's report, you can say, these are things that students didn't do too well in, and this is probably what they're going to tackle next year or the year after. So in terms of doing exams, for me anyways, I would say always just go for it. Like, have no fear. Even if you get 10% on the exam, it's fine. That means you know that you don't know 90%. And you could be happy, at least, I suppose, that you know something. You're not gonna, go to zero. But believe me, the more exams you do, you're going to realize, oh, I got 10% last time, I got 15% this time, oh, I got 20%, oh, I'm already at 80% before you know it. So that's sort of my thoughts on it, but I'll let Mahdi talk a little bit more about that from the English perspective.
Alrighty. So I think that was a really good sort of affirmation that you need to sort of like jump right into it sometimes and get confident knowing that you don't know. You know, it's pretty interesting, right? It's an interesting concept. Being comfortable in a really gray area where there's like a bunch of stuff. It's basically going into uncharted territory, walking with confidence, knowing nothing. I just wanted to sort of emphasize this mentality that I adopted near the end of year 12. And I carry on till today. And I think it's really changed my life, and I share it with everyone I meet. It's how to wire your brain, or how to sort of perceive any situation as the best possible situation. So let me explain. Let's say, hypothetically, you've got chemistry exam popping up or some sort of examination coming up. And you know, I had this plan, I had this schedule. I was supposed to do this. I should be 10 exams in right now, and I have done nothing. I should have finished my content, and I've only finished 60%. And my exam's right around the corner. Now you've got two options here. Number one, you completely let that get to you, and you walk into the exam, and you know it probably won't work out as much as you want to. Or number two, this is the mentality I'm talking about. Okay, this is what you need to do. So listen carefully. You tell yourself this. And I mean, don't just tell yourself, you sort of like internalize this. Sure, I haven't finished covering all the content, even though my exam's like next week. Sure, I haven't done any exams, but what I do have is this. At least I've covered the content throughout the year. At least I've covered chapter 1, and I know chapter 1. Maybe I've forgotten it, but I have the fundamentals intrinsically locked down. That's a pretty good realization. Tell you why. Because that means that you can revise that ASAP. Every single piece of content, you would have learned that throughout the year. And so hypothetically, if you walk into an exam and you have your content locked down, even if you haven't done all the exams you've wanted to, you have your fundamentals drilled. And that's a really empowering realization. So for me personally, with some of my subjects, I didn't get to finish all the exams I wanted to. In fact, I did like 10% of the exams I actually planned on doing. And I could have been really stressed out a day before. But I'm like, you know what? Even though I haven't looked at all the possible questions, at least I know I have my fundamentals down, because that's what you want to spend your time on. And so even if there's a question I should have been exposed to, you can use those fundamentals to overpower those questions, or at least put in what you think you can do. So having that positive mentality is absolutely critical. So that's point number one. Point number two, if you can't get all your exams done, you can't complete every single exam you want to, another strategy is to skim the questions and look for high yield stuff. So what do I mean by this? Let's say I'm talking about those sort of like math, science-based sort of exams. Instead of doing 50 exams, that's if you start really early, right? Because you don't want to burn yourself out. Go through those 50 exams, scroll down, be like, yep, I know this. That looks really dodgy. Add it to a document. That looks dodgy. Add it to a document. Just look for the dodgy ones, yeah? If you can at least spend your last 1 week or last few days, if you end up pushing it that far on, and perfect those really dodgy ones, basically you'll probably get a much higher study score than you otherwise would, because you're going to get the questions most people in the state don't know how to do. So that's my 2 tips for practice exams, and I want to pass it on.
I really like that second one, especially because I think a big barrier for a lot of people going into practice exams is this worry of, oh my goodness, I've got to do 90 minutes or 2 hours of questions, and I just don't know a lot. And the threshold or the worry factor or the barrier to do an exam is very, very high. But if you reduce that barrier and do the bare minimum, and it's the concept I was actually reading about just the other day. What do they call it? It's like micro tasking or something, micro habits. It's just do the bare minimum of anything that's actually worthwhile. So whilst brushing your teeth for 2 minutes is good, even if you brush your teeth for 10 seconds and you get into the habit of that, then you're probably going to brush your teeth for longer. Like if you say, I'm only going to brush my teeth for 5 seconds, once you've started, it's like, oh, I may as well continue, right? So just like you mentioned, it's like, okay, I'm not going to do the whole exam, right? I'm just going to scroll through, and the questions that scare me, I'm going to take note of it and read up on and work out how to answer. And then so like once you're already in the exam, like, oh, I actually know how to do this question as well. And I know how to do this question, rather than thinking I have to do it 100% perfectly, you know, to time and all that. So if you're really struggling with just getting started, try and adopt this, you know, idea of micro habits, absolute bare minimum. I'm going to do one question of a practice exam, but the fact that you've opened up the practice exam, you've done it, like, oh, okay, that wasn't too bad. Maybe I can do question 2. And then you just kind of gotten started. Like, that's exactly what I'm going through right now with my research. Rather than thinking I'm going to write, you know, 1,000 words a day, I'm like, I'm going to write 2 paragraphs. That's it. And I'm like, oh, I'm actually into it. Now I can kind of get started more. But having said that, though, if you are feeling motivated and you kind of got into a good habit and, you know, you've got 90 minutes in the morning, you know, try and do the exams to the best of your ability, you know, to time and without the book. And when I was doing a practice exam, a bit like exactly what Rafiq mentioned, I would kind of put it into, when I was doing questions and reviewing them, into, I kind of knew that. I know I'd know it if I just kind of touch up on a bit of my knowledge. So it's like, I know roughly photosynthesis is talking about this. I just, if I quickly just learn that fact, I'll remember it. Or the third stage is like, I have no idea about anything this question is asking. So it's like, I'm confident, I'm kind of confident, well, I've got no idea. And that was a nice kind of 3-tiered system that I used to then, as Rafiq said, revision of your exams is the most important thing, because I always said an exam that wasn't reviewed was an exam not done. So whilst some people might boast I've smashed out all these practice exams, I always ask, you know, how much are you learning from them? And exactly what Rafiq and Mahdi said, that you learn from the things that are that you get wrong. And if you get 20% right, you get 80% wrong. I'm like, that's great. That's 80% I can learn now and not in the actual thing. Another concept that I remember someone told me before going into year 12 was get comfortable, like as in do things that make you uncomfortable to the point that you get comfortable. So no one likes writing an English essay now, like, you know, it gives me nightmares, right? But if I knew I had an English exam in a month's time, I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to get any more confident by just sitting here. Let me do something that makes me uncomfortable now so I can be comfortable when it matters in the exam. And that, you know, that mentality, along with, you know, having friends motivating each other, you know, micro habits, just getting started, all those small things kind of culminate into actually getting things done that you want to, rather than, as Mahdi said, having these massive things of all the things I want to get done, but actually not getting them done. But yeah, I know we're just bombarding you guys with tips left, right, and center. But we will have, honestly, heaps of time at the end for Q&A to ask and clarify anything you have. Go for it, Teba.
I was just going to say, if you also have any questions, yeah, feel free to put it in the chat box now, and if it's relevant, we can answer it as we go as well. Just adding into that, I think similar to Rafiq, I'm a big maths person. I did all 3 maths back in BCE, so I can talk to that. There's some questions that my little sister's in BCE, so some of the questions that we were chatting about is, well, do I continue doing practice exams till the last second, like till the last day before the exam? And something now reflecting back, what I think would have been, I didn't do, but I wish I did, was at least a week before, to not do practice exams right to the last second, but leave a couple of days beforehand where you've, as you go through the exams, compile all the questions that, and I think Rafiq has mentioned as well, all the questions that you didn't do well, you didn't answer well, have them all compiled into like one booklet, and review that booklet, or review all the questions that you didn't do previously well in a week out of the exam. So rather than doing full exam papers right to the last second, where you'll have questions that are easy for you, kind of not really benefiting yourself in terms of making the most out of your time. So reviewing all of the questions that you didn't do well in is really important. So I guess going back to that, if you're now going into practice exams, doing more and more, to keep a log or a register of all the questions that you didn't feel confident in, or you haven't scored well in. So it's all compiled by the time you're getting closer to the exams and it's ready for you to review them. So that's Yusuf, you've opened up a poll.
Yeah, just got to break it up a little bit with a poll. It's good to see that people have started doing practice exams. But yeah, I think when your motivation's a bit low, just think micro habit. Let me just get started. And exactly what Mahdi mentioned as well. I'm sure we've all watched the procrastination TED Talk whilst procrastinating. But it talks about this this urgency monkey in terms of deadlines. So the fact of making artificial deadlines for yourself is a nice way of kind of getting into things. There was also another poll that I forgot to launch earlier, so we might just break it up before diving into English. Where am I? Nice. In that poll, yeah, so most of you have started practicing, which is good. Let's have a suss of how time management is, and I guess it's tricky with Zoom school and things like that. That really it's a big test of your self-control and your own discipline and time management. But yeah, I know it's easy to set lofty goals for yourself, but it can be tricky to kind of stick to that. One last thing that actually Rafiq and I are quite passionate about before we move on to English is we both use different apps to kind of not use our phones. So I'm a big fan of Forest. I've been using it for about 4 or 5 years now. So Forest is one that you pay for. It's about $3, and pretty much you set a timer. You can even have a bit of rain sound playing in the background to kind of keep you, serene. But pretty much if you open up your phone, you kill a tree. And there's just something emotional about don't wanting to kill trees that makes you not go on your phone. And you can also get onto your computer as well. And then if you earn a certain amount of coins, you can plant different types of trees. But the best thing is if you earn a certain amount of coins, you can plant real trees in real life. So it's nice kind of, feel like you're doing some good in the world whilst doing your study. So that's Forest. There's a free version called Flora that I think works in the same way. But if you don't finish, you can set it to a way of if you kill your tree or you open up your phone, you kill your tree, you then pay money, and then suddenly your procrastination becomes expensive. So that's one way of looking at it. And Rafiq has another one.
Yeah, I have another one that I don't use so much now, but I did when I was in school. It's called Habitica. And it's like especially useful if you guys are into games. So it's basically an RPG on your phone. That's really, really simple. All you have to do is like write down a bunch of tasks. And every time you do the task, you level up your hero. You can buy armor and, weapons and so on. And then you fight bosses. So it's like, it is a game, but you're winning in the game by winning in real life. So it's a multiplier. Like I said, I don't use it too much, but I know one of my friends does, and he's like huge in this game. He's got like 3 characters fully maxed out. But it's been going really well for him. I think once he found the game, like he's actually been a lot more productive, and he tells me as well. So it's great. Definitely one to look into if you're into that kind of thing.
I'm gonna look into all of these apps. I don't think I've downloaded any of them, so definitely gonna take some on board. My usual strategy is to delete the apps. It just as a kind of delete social media apps that I don't need and keep one as a way, kind of a sanity there to make sure I check it and keep on top of it. But again, I'm definitely gonna get into these apps.
And one thing I also do, like, it might be hard to completely, deactivate Facebook. But one thing I did was I don't have the Facebook app on my phone because it's just, auto playing videos and things like it just keeps you on there too long. But I do have it on Safari. I don't know if you guys have ever used Facebook on Safari, but it's like the worst platform. It's just like, it keeps like jamming and stopping. So it's not a very user-friendly experience. So that way, it stops me from watching those auto playing videos and things. But also with Forest, you can also plant with friends. So I often do that when I'm doing my research with my mate. We both jump on Zoom and we also plant together. So that way we know that, sure, we're on the Zoom call, but I also know he's not on his phone, because if he's on his phone, then my tree dies as well. And then it's like this, it's a nice kind of connection as well. So that's another option. And you can kind of see how, 6 years of uni have made me tried all weird and wonderful things. I won't talk about my cold showers. I think that gets a bit too extreme, but that is another level. Yeah, we'll just stop there. But yes, we're all still learning ourselves, and yeah. So go Mahdi.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I completely agree with that. I wanted to add, I guess, this idea of assessing your intrinsic reason as to why you're studying. So what do I mean by this? So human beings, we do things and we have a purpose for doing them. You're either doing it because, you're trying to make your parents proud, or You're like every action you do, you joining this Zoom meeting shows your level of proactivity, right? Because it takes some level of like urgency to actually sign up, register, get the Zoom link and come in. Some people, you know, they don't want to do that. So first of all, props to you for coming in here today. Really proud of you all. But most importantly, let's assess our like realization as to why we're doing this. So think about what you're trying to do. What getting, you know, what doing well in BCE is going to do for you. Why do you want to do well in BCE? Is it just because, you know, I feel like it or I have to do it? For me, my reason last year was sort of to prove to myself that if I put in, you know, if I put in the effort needed, there's like no sort of barriers that you can't sort of overcome. And it's very, very liberating to know that if you set any barrier, anything you want in your life, so long as it's in the reasonable scope of what you want, what you can achieve, you can go do it. And I think, you know, pertinent examples are people like Elon Musk, if you guys have seen him doing all these sort of, you know, amazing things that most people would, you know, critically sort of condemn and be like, you know, that's not possible. But so realize what motivates you, use that to fuel you and get that fire going, and that will wake you up every single day. Yusuf was talking about how he struggled to wake up. This will wake you up.
Thanks, Mahdi. And before we move to, I guess, the next part of English, I just wanted to, I guess, with all the chat about time management and productivity and working hard and hustling and you know, and that sphere that we're all in the last couple of weeks, I also want to acknowledge that this is quite a stressful time as well. And there's a lot of pressure. And a lot of it, I do think it's an internal pressure, whether it can be parent pressure, external. But I think for me, it was a lot of internal pressure that I put on myself. And just acknowledging that it is a stressful time, and that it's as important as we get all these, you know, 100 practice exams and 100 hours of studies and put in as many studying hours as we possibly can. It's also equally important to put in hours towards yourself and your well-being and your mental health. I definitely didn't acknowledge it or realize it to this extent that I should have. But now that I'm, I guess, going through university and going through that journey, it's mental health can be a bit of a reactive thing that we all end up doing once we feel really burnt out and we feel like we're flat with no energy and flat with no more motivation. So putting time for yourself aside and scheduling it and taking it to the same importance and priority as if you're doing a practice exam, that's equally important. Recognizing what fuels you with energy, whether it's watching a show, hanging out with friends, eating chocolate, going for a walk, recognizing that is equally important and prioritizing it to the same importance as the other tasks as well. So yeah, I just wanted to put in, because I know it can be quite overwhelming when we're talking about, oh, like, you know, we're using all these apps to be so productive and smash out all these things. It's overwhelming, particularly in a times when, you know, COVID, where it's online. It's feeling of disconnection is very easy to feel.
I'll just add in one more, because I'd feel criminal if I didn't say it. Because we were just talking about stress and things. What I found was really important to me was doing practice exams and pretending they were the actual exams, which I know is like counterintuitive. Like that sounds like a lot of stress. But hear me out. What I mean by that is basically this idea, and I think it's really important, is this separation of sort of studies and not studies, right? Because I feel, especially now, like with lockdown and people are sort of just staying in their room, right? In your room, you're like sleeping. Some people are having dinner in their rooms. Some people are like, that's where they, you know, watch TV. It's where they watch Netflix. That's also where they study. It's like everything is self-contained in this room. And every time you walk into this room, it's like you have no idea what environment you're walking into, if that makes sense. So for me, what I did whenever I was doing practice exams was actually go to a different table. And I'll say I had no table in my room because my room is really small. But I would go to a different table for the exams, and it was like specifically for exams. I would never do anything else on that table. And table is just like sort of a random one that other people used in my family, obviously. It wasn't reserved especially for me. But for like mentally, to me, I sort of put it into my head that that was the exam table. And when I was going to the table, it was like just for exams, no phone, no nothing. It was like I only have the stuff I would bring to the exam. I have my banded reference, I have my pencils, I have my pens, things like that. So yeah, I think important, especially now with the pandemic and everybody staying at home, is to get that separation mentally, but I think it helps to have a physical separation as well between studying and just normal life.
Definitely. And I think, yeah, as you mentioned, lockdowns and COVID has really exacerbated that. And yeah, I had this saying during year 12, like work hard. Well, it's not really my saying, everyone knows, but like work hard, play hard. And there's also, I'm also religious, so like pray hard as well. But yeah, work hard and play hard is a nice one that way, you know, you can have this kind of on off switch. So I played basketball all throughout year 12, and that way you just kind of, you know, you get work done, hopefully when you have planned for it. But then when you have a night off or you're going for a walk, that way you can actually enjoy that pleasure properly, rather than like saying I'm going to work all day and then actually not and be on your phone. And then when you're on your phone, you're not really having fun because you think you should be working. But then when you're studying, you're like, oh, I wish I could have a break. Like, so just having actual time to have a break. Like I said, I finished all of Avatar in my last month before my exams. And like, you know, and that was fine. Like, you know, it was good. It was like my motivator, and it was also my time break. It was a good idea. So having a few things that you can really just switch off on is a really, really important thing, and definitely really important to look after yourselves, because I saw so many friends just go way too hard thinking that they were being productive, but they were just running themselves into the ground. So prioritize sleeping, prioritize eating, prioritizing, you know, family, friends, those kind of things. Because I'm always of the opinion that we waste so much time in the day anyway, that like you don't have to study for 16 hours. That if you studied for a solid, you know, 5 hours in the whole day, that's like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, 1 hour in the day, you could have the rest of the day off, right? But it's just this idea that you need to be studying for every moment, every second of the day. But then if you just think back to yesterday, when you said you were going to study, how much of that time was on your phone, not really studying, you know, kind of not zoned in. So that's what the reason why I think we're also passionate about really intense focused study was so you can free yourself up later on the day to have a life. But if you're kind of working at, you know, 20% productivity all day, then it just sucks all your energy. So it's like, you know, 100% or 80% when you're locked in for those 25 minutes for that half an hour, and then actually having 0%, you know, time off for the other time. So really that switch on, switch off mentality. I know we've spoken a lot about this, and we're definitely going to jump back into that in the Q&A, but we've got a bit of a English section for the next kind of 20-30 minutes by Mahdi. So just going to quickly launch the poll and hand it over to Teba to interrogate Mahdi.
Thanks, Yusuf. So yeah, I guess similar to what Yusuf said, English does give me nightmares as well. Not my favorite subject, which is why I'm so glad to have Mahdi on board. We've got the poll in terms of how much do you hate English. I don't know, do you want to publish the responses for everyone?
Sure, what's the answers?
It's coming. People, well, no one loves it, and I think that's fair enough. I think, you know, in this call we have a buddying, we have someone doing commerce, medicine, engineering. So clearly those three don't like English too much, and then we've obviously got a lawyer who did very well in English. So it's clear who's going to win the English part. But I think, yeah, and then later on we'll kind of chuck in how the rest of us survived English as well. But keen to hear from yourself, Mahdi, who's passionate.
Yeah, tell us, Mahdi, I'm keen to hear what, at this time of the year during these holidays, what was your strategy in terms of tackling English? What did you do? What were the key things important to you at this stage?
So I'll just begin by saying it's quite interesting how the presupposition is we all hate English. Like even in the actual poll, it's like, what if someone here actually likes English? You know, we've got someone in the comments. No, anyways, so look, I guess my goal right now is to transform that immense, you know, furthest hatred towards English and make that into something that you might actually enjoy. And I strongly believe that every single one of you will walk out here feeling more confident. So at this stage, we've got less than 30 days until your English exam. Now you have two options to think about this. Either you're going to be like, oh my gosh, oh no, I haven't even started my 3-hour exams, and you know, if you are doing 3-hour exams, I'm pretty shocked because you don't have to be doing it right now. And I'm going to show you how you can prepare for English, even if you have 5 days left. Okay, so don't worry, listen carefully, and you will feel comfortable walking out. So at this stage, or in fact, throughout the entire year, I transitioned my mindsets in English specifically from not thinking about how many exams I'm going to do to thinking about what am I actually going to write. So this is the mentality shift I want you all to think about right now. You have 1 hour. Well, you have 3 hours, of course, but 1 hour approximately, give or take. You can add 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you feel like in your exam for each component, section A, section B, section C. If you decide to write on the spot in an exam, you might do decent. Maybe you've done 50 practice exams. You might write decently. But if you're being compared to someone who has absolutely perfect writing, you will not stand a chance. When I realized that, I'm like, damn. And I looked around me, everyone's doing all these exams. I'm like, you know, you can't get perfect wording like this. And you can't perfectly express analysis like this. What is a better, more efficient way of approaching this? That was the question that came to my mind. Now, in order to answer this question, I had to go against all of convention, all of what all these English teachers of all these different schools have been teaching. I actually was condemned by some teachers, you know, not condemned, but sort of critically, they looked at me very critically, like, what is this kid doing? You know, you're not going to do well like that. This strategy's never happened before, right? And let me tell you what you need to do. So before I tell you what I need to do, I wanted to ask Teba, is there any follow-up questions? Because I don't want to address those before they come in.
No, we not. No, I mean, you mean from the comments?
I mean, like, was there any other English questions? Because I'm probably going to answer it all in this response right now.
Yeah, I mean, there were questions about how do we tackle practice exams from an English point of view, and how do you memorize quotes and remember them and include them in the essays.
All right, done. Let's do this. Okay. We have 5 minutes on the clock. Let's get it done. 12:07, I'll be done. Okay. 12:07, you'll feel confident. So what you need to do is this: section A, section B, section C. What is section A? Text response. Usually, yes. Section B is comparative text response. Let's group those into one. The text response combo, basically just analysis, thinking about the author, trying to relate ideas to society. Okay. And then we've got section C, which is, what is it? I call this the real life component. Basically, if you're good at section C, you'll have a good, like, if you enjoy section C, you'll have a good time speaking to people because you're able to learn what words to tell people. Because remember connotations, the meaning of words. If you know how to analyze connotations, you can speak and you'll be able to say the right words to people so they feel happy, right? So that's the real life component, section C. Now, how do we prepare for these things in the exam? Okay. Section A and section B, text response. What is the point of text response? The point of text response is this, okay? You have these random books about random characters, and you have all these random quotes, okay? Whether, you know, you guys are all studying different books, but you might have some random quotes about life, and the best essays are the ones that get these random quotations and try and make them have some sort of significance to real life. For example, let's make up a quote right now. Oh, sweat rolled down my cheek, or tears, not sweat. Tears rolled down my cheeks, okay? Now, you'll just be thinking, okay, this random character, Tony, is crying right now. Why is Tony crying? Okay, then you think, okay, what's the author trying to say? Oh, the author doesn't really like people who are very discriminatory, people who, you know, are racist. Oh, okay. So the consequence of being racist is people end up crying, and thus it has an emotional and interpersonal impact on people. Therefore, the author saying don't discriminate against people unless you want to penetrate their hearts and cause them to cry. You know, you chuck that in your essay. You're like, okay, cool. We've got one idea. We've got the idea about tears. Then you look inside the text. Okay, what's another idea? We've got another idea about, you know, the human hand. At the end, let's say at the end of the book, Tony, you know, he's been discriminated upon, yet he finds one good person who doesn't discriminate against him, who's not racist. They end up holding hands. All right. The author's saying that it is only through abandoning this discriminatory narrative that human beings are able to embrace love and empathy, the epitome of humankind. Done. Another idea, we'll call that the hand idea. You know, this is a random book, by the way. None of you guys are studying attorney from what I've understood. Now you make a document, okay? A document with the crying idea, a document with the hand idea, a document with this idea. Your goal for these next 30 days is to absolutely smash these ideas, perfect them, get your teachers, get your friends, make this sound incredible, okay? And make around 10 to 15 ideas. Oh, I have 2 minutes left on the clock. All right, I'm making artificial deadlines, as you can see, yeah? Even though I have like 30 minutes, I'm making an artificial deadline, but I'm probably not gonna finish it. Anyways, so you make a document with all these ideas and you perfect them. You make it a decent length, you know, 5 to 6 lines, boom, smash it, smash it, smash it. Now, what's gonna happen here? Firstly, if you ever decide to write a practice exam from now on, what ideas are you gonna use? Are you gonna just, oh yeah, on the spot, we'll just mention some stuff and like read the book and quickly try and analyze? No, you're not. You're gonna get those ideas, you're gonna smash them in and you're gonna adapt it to the prompts. But you come to an issue where it's like, okay, I still have to do a bit of thinking because these ideas are not directly related to the prompt. You could have a prompt about, why does this book hate discrimination? Okay, that's easy. But then if the prompt's about, why does this book abandon the social stigma? You're like, oh, I don't know how to relate that. How does that have to do with crying? How does that have to do with tears? I don't know. Okay, so you come to a sort of obstacle. That's why there's a second component to this document. You get those ideas. Let's say the idea about crying and the idea about the hand. Okay, if you guys are with me so far, you mush it. Okay, like a burger. You put them together, and then you're like, okay, I've got a pretty decent paragraph now. Let's try and make it turn into a paragraph. You turn it into some paragraph. Okay, try and make some sort of comparison between them, and then what you need to do is you basically have these next 30 days to think, how on earth can I get these ideas and mold them to prompts? Oh, so that's a much better position than thinking, I'm going to have to write 1 hour on the spot. Now you're thinking, how do I adapt to prompts? Which is a pretty chill realization. Yeah, it just puzzle piecing at the end. That's all English becomes. You sort of understood the mechanics behind the subject, and you sort of like created a system where you don't need to think. I guess the best students are the ones that don't think. Like Rafiq, you smashed maths, right? It gets to a point where the less you think, the better you do. Because if you start thinking, you know, your brain gets all over the place, every single question, you don't know how to solve it. You'd rather sort of systemize the process. And so what you need to do after this, after you've made your mini paragraphs, okay, is you go through every single possible prompt you've ever seen in your life. Or that could ever, you can even make up prompts with your friends. I'm talking like 100 prompts if you can find some or make some. So before my exam, all I did was I got my paragraphs and then I looked at a bunch of prompts sitting with my brother, and then we're like, how do we adapt that to this? 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 And it's pretty chill. It's like, okay. And you'll find some that are a bit dodgy. You're like, hopefully it doesn't come in the exam. That's so weird. And it probably doesn't. VCA doesn't put really weird questions because remember the entire state's trying to do it. So if you ever see a really weird question that like is very unlikely, it's probably not going to come. But you know, your main stock questions, stock standard type questions are going to come in definitely. So that's how you'd approach section A and B. Okay. Of course, you can do a little bit of exams here and there, but motivated to retake the English exam now 6 years later. I'm pretty sure you still smashed English. Anyways, yeah. So then that's section A and B. You sort of become really chill because I don't like doing things on the spot. I like to sort of have preparation, and I try and apply this in university right now. You know, I have my law exams coming up to sort of like make a document similar, same exact thing as English. Now, section C, argument analysis. Then you're like, oh, I can't prepare for that. That's an article on the spot. No, you can prepare for it. You can prepare for any subject in the world, right? You can even prepare for biology, and you can do the same strat that I'm telling you about. I have someone that I know who got a 50 in bio, made a document with all the types of questions and memorized the answers, and it works, okay? You don't need to sort of innovate on the spot to do well. You can always prepare. Now, section C, argument analysis. Now you got to think, okay, what's the purpose of argument analysis? The idea is, okay, you have certain quotations, you have certain things that an author's trying to say, or a writer, or whatever you want to call them. this person's trying to push forth some sort of contention, okay, some sort of idea. Now, Vika, they don't like to pick very contentious things. That's why I never did stuff from The Age. I never did stuff from news outlets, because Vika is not contentious. Vika is not political in any way. Vika likes to talk about things like rubbish, for cleaning up rubbish, or, that random coffee shop, or gentrification, which is like when you have a society that's really old and new buildings start to come in. Like, that's what Vika likes to talk about. So get used to those sort of ideas. And what do you need to do? Well, all you need to do is think, is this writer persuasive? Is this person, you're sort of thinking, how is this person actually trying to persuade me? You're sort of breaking down what your mind is thinking. I always use this example, and I'm going to use it here right now. Imagine we're talking about how technology is really bad, okay? Technology, the iPad, it's really bad. Well, if I'm an author of an article, I'm going to chuck in something like this, okay? I'm going to start off my article, and I'm going to say this. Listen up, folks. Oh, I'm not going to say that. Stuff that, okay? That's really bad. I'm going to say something like, my son was hypnotized by the iPad. He was exposed, and I can't have that connection with him anymore. He doesn't even give me his time of day. And there's like an image of like some robotic human being stuck and glued to the iPad. Now, if you're a parent, right? Like some sort of parent, and you actually care about your kids. The reason why I said you actually care about your kids is, some parents don't care about their kids. You got to be specific, okay? And you actually care about your kids. It's pretty powerful, right? But if you're just like your average, person down the street, and you don't feel like ever getting kids, and you don't care about children, you'll be like, whatever, you move on. I like technology, it helps me in my workplace. But if you're a parent and you genuinely care about having that connection with your children, you're going to feel it. But the point of argument analysis is to explain the process of how that makes you feel that certain way. So what are we going to focus on? My child was hypnotized by the iPad. Hypnotized. We're going to focus on the connotation of that word. What does this particular word mean? Okay, hypnotize. It has this sort of robotic undertone to it. This idea that your child has lost their humanity. Okay, so Mahdi, the author, uses the lexicon hypnotized, the word hypnotized, in order to position parents who may potentially care about their children's well-being into a heightened state of concern as their children are losing their humanity, full stop. Okay, done and dusted. You chuck some of those in, and all of a sudden you got a nice essay going. All right, now how do we systemize this process? How do we make this process more straightforward? Okay, what if you make a document with all those potential sentence starters for all those potential types of things that can pop up in an article? So sentence starters for connotations. Nice. So author uses the lexicon X in order to do Y. Nice. All right, we've got a nice sort of sentence starter we can build off. What about if the author uses an image? Okay, let's think of a way to start off a sentence like that. What if the author uses a phrase, or what if the author uses statistics? Mahdi's use of 50% of children who use the iPad get hypnotized is unequivocally evokes parents into a heightened state of concern. Unequivocally, it's a factual thing. Having those prepared in a document and memorizing them is a game changer. Because I walked into that exam having all those potential sentence starters. Every single sentence was high yield. So imagine an examiner's reading this. You're being compared to someone who's writing on the spot. Oh, this word is really bad because of this, versus the lexicon XYZ. Every sentence is high yield, high yield, high yield, high yield. Like even if you're not doing well in English, if you decide to do this, you can make the examiner believe, there's all psychology here. You make them believe that you're, a really high scoring student. And if you can make your examiner believe this, it doesn't matter how good you actually are at English, you can still walk out doing pretty decent. So that's the first part of approaching English. The second part is, how do you remember quotes? Well, that links to the thing I told you about the document, and that's crying idea and that hand idea. So if you remember, we had that quote of tears rolled down Tony's cheeks, or something of that nature. Tears rolled down Tony's cheeks, or tears dribbled down Tony's cheeks, right? Instead of just making a quote bank like most students do, tears dribbled down Tony's cheeks. I don't know, Tony was really angry. Tony hit something, I don't know, whatever. remember the quotations with their analysis. That's what you need to do. So make it in that document, talk about, you know, Mahdi presents Tony as having tears dribbling down his cheeks in order to present the interpersonal repercussions of a discriminatory narrative in society, whatever. Yeah. And like, you know, you're not going to remember the quote, but you're going to remember how to actually include it. There's one thing knowing quotes, but there's another thing actually knowing how to include it. And you don't want to struggle with embedding the quote in your exam with 1 hour, with that pressure, with all these kids around you. You know, in my exam, funny thing, yeah, I was like doing the exam for English and I had some kid next to me, yeah, and he's like literally like doing this, trying to look at me. I'm like, bro, come on. It's like, he's literally peeking over. And I'm like, dude, you can look at what I'm doing, but like, how am I gonna, it's English, dude, you know? So if we don't want to be like that, guys, make a document, memorize it, okay? And you'll be fine. And I think because of that artificial deadline I gave myself, I answered both questions in half the time, which is awesome.
There you go. Thanks, Mahdi. I think the theme of what we all kind of trying to do is be lazy, productive people. And that's something that I've recognized maybe as engineers, I think generally are quite lazy people. So trying to find the laziest ways of doing things. But it seems like that's, you know, quite a common thing that we're speaking all about today, trying to figure out, do the work now so it takes us less thinking time during the exam and less thinking time closer to the exam period, which is really, really, Mahdi, I kind of resonate with a lot of what you said about the memorizing, or like not memorizing, but having paragraphs. I felt definitely like the same, similar to the walking to the English exam. I didn't do, thankfully, a lot of thinking in the English exam itself. Back when I did it, we had the creative, we didn't have the comparative text response, we had just the creative part. And that was just, I think I changed 3 sentences there and written it in there because it's just, I've written it so many times that I knew it by heart. But yeah, really good tips. And like, I agree with what Yusuf said. I think I'm ready to take the exam again and maybe just maybe score a 50.
Yeah. Honestly, thanks, Mahdi. There's some real gems there. I wish I had known. And just reflecting on it from kind of, you know, being out of the game for a while and how I did things to hearing that perspective. I think really the take home was being really well prepared with your kind of game plan, that you're not rocking up there hoping that you get a good prompt, or you hope that you can write well and think of good ideas. Because that was a big scary point for me. I'm like, what if I get writer's block? What if I can't write a good sentence? What if I get a bad prompt? But if you've just prepared so well, that you've got all these really great sentences, sentence starters, you know, quotes with their analysis in your arsenal, in your kind of toolbox, you're walking up to the exam with this toolbox and you're just like, yep, I can just kind of deploy all these different things, and then you make an essay rather than hoping you write well. And also, I guess, in terms of linking it back to what we were talking about with, you know, how to study, like for me, the biggest stumbling block was just sitting down and writing an essay for an hour. But if I'm suddenly, for my English study for next month is, you know, getting quotes, analyzing them, all these kind of cool things, then that, you know, is a micro habit and reduces the threshold to actually get into my English study. But probably one thing I can, and this is probably from my perspective of how I can see that this technique might potentially fall down, is if you also don't put in the work of adapting it. And I think that's really the key to this. It's that adapting. So you can have the most incredible, you know, code bank with analysis and all this stuff, but if you actually haven't been, you know, into the, you know, 1 hour pressure situation of seeing how you can adapt it in the terms, that's the tricky part. And I really like what you mentioned of you pull up code after code after, prompt after prompt after prompt after prompt, and just think, okay, how could I adapt it to this? How could I adapt it to this? How could I adapt to this? And funny story, that's definitely not how I did my English preparation, but it was how I studied for my GAMSAT. So for those of you who are thinking about doing medicine, that's the postgraduate exam. And I had 2 sittings for my English, for my essays. My first sit, I was just writing on the topic. It was, you had to write 2 essays in an hour. So one essay, half an hour each. First one, I was like, you know, I practiced on my writing and stuff, but to be honest, I wasn't very good, even though I did well in English in year 12, but it was just a different kind of ball game. And, you know, I remember it was like, I just write, you know, oh, democracy is good, and just kind of come up with things on the topic. And I got like smack bang average mark. Like it was just, you know, not very good. I got a 59, which doesn't mean anything to you guys, but you kind of want to get around 70. to do well to get into med school. But then the second time I had this, which was my creative essay writing from year 12, actually, Teba, this essay that I knew was high scoring, and I just kind of molded it to anything that came up. If it was democracy, I'm like, how does racism, and that was my topic, how does racism kind of adapt with democracy? How does racism kind of go with imagination? And like, I just adapt my really good essay as Mahdi adapted his sentence starters to the prompt. And then during my preparation, I would practice integrating, adapting it in the real, like, you know, with an hour of writing or half an hour of writing. But I'd also do a lot of work on the side of just looking at prompt after prompt after prompt, thinking, how can I adapt it? How can I adapt it? And then my second sit, I went in there with a lot more confidence, knew that I had this really solid game plan, made me a lot less stressed. And then thankfully I got a 71. And that was like, you know, a really, really big jump up from like a 60th percentile to a 90th percentile. And that I can really tell people that was a difference. I went in there writing airy fairy to then having this really solid arsenal of quotes and structure that you just need to adapt. So I say it's great that you can get, you know, build those documents, build those analysis, those sentence starters. I think that's the easy part almost. That's your threshold to get in. But then really to do well, you need to be make sure you're able to adapt that correctly. Otherwise, they'll just think you're just writing whatever essay you want and not actually writing it to the topic. So make sure you get that second part of adapting really well. But I think that's a really nice structure to move forward with. And you've got actually so much time to implement a lot of that. And trying to reduce how much thinking you're doing during the English exam because you're too busy writing. So yeah, thanks again for that, Teba and Mahdi. Rafiq, maths wizard, how did you survive English?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I'll say, even though I really don't like English, I did well enough in it to get past. And I'll touch on a few points that you guys already mentioned. But with respect to like the analysis, obviously I hate English. So all this analysis stuff is like really not a fun thing for me. But I remember like the things I remember most from year 12 was me and my group of friends like getting on a call, and then we would just discuss ideas about the book. And I know it sounds like really boring, but you're kind of studying, right? But you're also kind of not at the same time. And I know so far we've just discussed like, everyone, get on one hour, 30 minutes, whatever, really high yield study. But I think sometimes you just can't be bothered, right? And getting on like this call, or we used to have a group chat, and then somebody would come up with a prompt and be like, that's a really good one. Like, what do we think about this, that? And then even though I didn't have sort of a formal document with all those ideas, slowly as a group, we sort of had a bunch of ideas that we could talk about the book. So I think that's really one useful one if you're not a fan of analysis. I'll also point out a few things that helped me, and also something that you guys should know. Getting a 40 in English, right? And I remember Yusuf was telling me this when I was in high school, but he said, getting a 40 is not that hard. And I don't mean like it's easy, okay? What I mean by that is you don't have to do something incredible. You just have to not make the mistakes that everybody else makes.
I feel like I want to make it, I think I said that for physics because I was your physics tutor, but maybe you made it to English, but by all means.
I think it's possible. It's possible. Amin told me the same thing actually about English.
Probably.
Yeah, I think he stole that off you, perhaps. But he told me the same thing about English, and I was like, I guess that sort of makes sense, because I would look around, right? And although I didn't come from like, Melbourne High or anything, I would look around and then I could see like point out flaws in the essays that were just like very, very obvious. And it wasn't like, nobody here can write a really good essay, which is not true. Like everybody whose essays I read was very, very capable, but it was like just really, really basic things like, you have a quote here, what's it doing? I don't know. I just felt like putting the quote in there. So I think it's these really fundamental ideas that can get you up to that 40, but obviously to get the 50, it's a different ball game kind of thing. But also statistically speaking, I guess, because I'm a stats nerd, it's 40 is the what? I think it's the top 10% almost, right? or top 9%, something like that. And there are a lot of people doing English, right? Like 10% of 400,000, maybe, students is a really big percent. Yeah, 8%, 9%, something like that. So don't be too discouraged, even if you really don't like English. I really didn't like English. And I'll tell you as well, I tell this to everybody that I meet. My English was so bad at the start of the year. I remember handing in my first essay, and this was like 5 weeks into the school year. I handed it in, and I was writing in black pen, and my teacher marked it in red pen, and there was more red pen. I guarantee you, there was more red on the paper than black, because there was so much wrong with the essay. And I handed in my second one. It was only when I handed in my 6th or 7th one, my teacher was like, you know what, this is actually possible. This is all right. And I thought, I've sort of made it. But yeah, I think English is one of the subjects where it's really, really daunting, but also there's a lot of room for you to grow. It's very, very possible to get a good mark if you put in the effort.
Yeah, it rewards hard work as well. Like if you put in the effort for English, you know you can do well. 100%. Teba?
Just jumping in there. I completely agree. I think the common thing that we're hearing is you don't have to be just an completely English person to do well in English. There's certain strategies and certain processes that you implement that can get you better. I think at this time, with only a couple of weeks left, you want to focus on these strategies to make the most out of it. But I resonate with what Rafiq said about, I walked into English in year 12. I remember my English in year 11 to the start of year 12 was absolutely rubbish. I remember telling my teacher at the start of the first week or two that I want to get above 40 in English, and she laughed at me. She's like, I don't know. I had a really savage Year 12 teacher. If there's any serious college students in here, Miss Keegan, you'd all know, really savage teacher. But she was like, there's no way in hell you're getting above 40. Thankfully I did by the end of it. But I think, just really comforting to know, and I know from experience, if you're not an English person, that's not the end of the world. There's strategies and the processes that you can do to get better at it. There's lots of hope.
Just to add, sorry, Yusuf, you can say something. I think you raised a very good point, Teba, and even Rafiq. I just wanted to address like, you don't have to have like, it's really awesome to have like a good teacher who sort of like edits all your stuff, and obviously it's really great, but some of you here might not have that sort of privilege in that sense. Because I know a lot of students who, they'll send essays to their teachers, they're very proactive, but they'll get like 3 lines of feedback. No, didn't mention target audience, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And it's like, you might think it's not helpful. Well, obviously it's not helpful, yeah? Like that's pretty straight. It's obviously not going to be helpful for you, but I think that strategy of making those documents and getting your teacher to be like, okay, look, you don't like this essay, but at least look at this document that I'm making and tell me how to make it better. You need to give your teacher, if you have an issue with your teacher not giving you specific feedback, that means it's on you to make your teacher get those good qualities from your teacher and get them, like, it's sort of like a leadership quality. Look at what your teacher has and get those good things and let him or her adapt it to what you have. Don't just like be passive and be like, okay, my teacher's not giving me good feedback, it's the end of the world. Every teacher has something they can give. Find that something that you think they can give, use that, and get them to use that like good quality in them to sort of adapt it to your document. That's number one. And secondly, Yusuf, you raised a really good point about the importance of adapting. I'd say like English really, I personally was never an English sort of person, like just to be clear. I'm more of a maths science person, and that's why it's pretty interesting, like why am I doing law? But I did the 3 maths as well, and I really cared about that stuff more than I did about English in year 10, 11 and year 9. And in fact, like I used to not be good at speaking or decent at speaking at all. I used to suck at speaking, and I used to be not as confident as well. I couldn't write if my life depended on it. So I know how it feels in that sense. And I'm telling you, anyone can get good at speaking, good at English. And I guess the solution, the key is, we as human beings, we learn from replicating success. What do I mean by this? You can't go look at average things and then expect to become really good at whatever you want to get good at in life. Like, let's talk about English. You can't look at decent essays and then expect yourself to be writing exceptionally. You need to seek out the cream of the crop quality, the best quality you can, And this will show you sort of where the bar is. And I promise you, you'll learn those new words. You'll learn how to adapt. You'll learn everything because we like to replicate success. How do we learn how to walk? We replicate successful walking, right? We don't, if someone's like, can't walk and then they're teaching how to walk, you're not going to walk, right? Like you got to learn from success. That's the key. That's my final point I wanted to say. What do you guys think? I'm keen to hear.
I don't think much more needs to be said. I totally agree. That you learn from those who've done it before, and ask them what they've done. And like, I think in order to do well, you have to be quite humble in terms of seeking out people and asking questions and things like that. Very, very useful. You were going to say something, Teba, sorry?
No, just echoing what you're saying as well. No, really nothing else to add. Did we want to move to question time?
I think so. I think
questions?
Yeah, well, to be honest, no one's asked any questions yet, so feel free, guys. We're going to move on to questions, and then I've
got one question that's come through. It's direct message. Someone asked, how many exams should we aim to do for further maths or for math subject bracket further maths particularly? What do we as a number? Throw a number around.
I still remember how many further exams I did. And to be honest, I think I did a few too many. I did 52, but I did it as a year 11 student, so that changes things. I obviously had a lot more time. And I think with maths, you kind of reach a plateau. So I did further in year 11. I was fortunate enough to get a perfect score. But I think by the time I did 52, so 52 was exam, like 26 exam 1, 26 exam 2. So, only 26 sets. But I think you really do hit a plateau that you, especially with further, that the questions, you know what's coming up, you know the type of questions that are coming up. But the biggest thing is just keeping on top of those silly mistakes. So I say in the next month, when you're doing practice exams with further, rather than just trying to smash them out as much as you can, practice doing it. I'd say do it to time, do it with your bound reference, do it properly. And even if you have half an hour at the end that you'll finish the exam, force yourself to sit there for that half an hour and check every single one of your exams, because whilst it might feel good to finish the exam half an hour earlier, but when you check your exam and then you get 2 or 3 questions wrong and you just be kicking yourself that you got that wrong, like reviewing it, and I know you'll tell yourself, oh, in the real thing I wouldn't make that mistake because I'd check over, but actually checking over your questions is a skill that like it's very unnatural that you think you're done, like, oh, I'm finished. Like, no, I need to go and check. And I still remember in my real thing, I did check, and I found 1 mark of a mistake. And in further, for every half mark from the top, you drop a study score. So 1 mark is 2 study scores. So it's very, very cutthroat. And the reason why we say half marks is because there's 2 examiners, and one of them might give you 2 marks, one of them might give you 1 mark, and that's how half mark comes into it. Anyway, so I'd say probably the biggest thing I can say further is try and do as many practice exams as you can with proper timing, proper review process, and proper checking over your exams, checking over your answers whilst you're in the exam. I think in my real thing, exam 1, I pretty much did every question twice. Exam 2, I was actually pushed for time, so I didn't have time to review. But that would be my advice for further exams.
No, I think I cannot stress enough the reviewing part. I did north of 60, but I think it was such a waste at the end of it. I regret doing the process that I didn't have enough reviewing in it. So after I finished the exam, I would go mark, okay, I got these wrong. I look at the answers. I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. And then move on and never look at the exam ever again. And I think that was a big mistake that I made. Have a proper review process in place. So the questions that you do get wrong, make sure you allocate time to review them again and give it a day or 2 to try them out again, re-answer it again, and see if you can answer it without making the same mistake that you did. Because at the end of it, you get to a stage where you're just going through a kind of a mindless process of just going through questions without actually getting a lot of value from it. So really important to do that review. Sometimes it is cliche, but quality over quantity can be a big factor as well. Rafiq and Mahdi, what do you guys think?
Rafiq,
just really quickly agree with both of your points. Like you don't need to do that many practice exams. I'll say I did like 50 exams for methods, but that wasn't because I thought I was getting a lot out of it. I just enjoyed the subject a lot. But you really don't need to do 50, for example, in further on methods. What's most important is getting those, because at some point you just sort of know the easy questions, and then it's 1 or 2 marks that you have no idea how to do, or you're always struggling with. And it's just working on those bits towards the end that I think is most important.
Mm. We're getting some questions. I'm getting some direct messages. So I've got a question in regards to revising content. And do you recommend revising content that you don't understand through practice acts, so you kind of know what you understand and what you don't, or is it better to just go straight into exams or practice exams? So kind of balance revise content or just jump straight through exams. Thoughts?
Was that a general one or?
Yeah, general one.
I would say for me personally, I would just jump straight into it. Doesn't matter what you get, because whatever score you get, you're going to go over what you went wrong or where you went wrong anyway. So I think just jump into it.
Is that for the sciences and maths and English, or
I think Mahdi has some thoughts on the English exam. So I didn't do many English exams at all. I think I did maybe 5 at most, and that was just for, it wasn't so I could get good at writing or like write good essays. It was just so I was used to the 3 hours sort of rush. But yeah, that's what I would think.
In terms of the sciences and also maths, I would dive straight in. Even if you're getting 20%, you're getting it wrong, that's 80% you can learn from. And probably the bigger thing though is it grounds your study in the things that are actually relevant. Like I could pick up my biology textbook, right, and think I'm studying because I'm not good at photosynthesis, but there's like a whole chapter of photosynthesis. There's so much info there, but like we all know that the questions they ask about photosynthesis are like inputs, outputs, and then some weird different rates of photosynthesis that they change, and like that's about it. So you only get that perspective of what they're going to actually ask by doing questions. So, but 100%, get that micro habit starting. Just open up a practice exam and do 2 questions, and just get into the habit of seeing what questions are like. Because the other aspect of it is knowing how to also write your answers as well and what they're looking for, rather than knowing the content. I always say that even if you memorize the whole biology textbook or any of the other sciences, if you memorize the whole textbook, I don't think you would get beyond 35, because so many of the questions now are all about applying it to new situations with the principles you've learned. So that's really important. Great that so many questions have come through, guys. Just remember to direct it to everyone so everyone can see the questions. So we've got a couple English questions, which I think we'll let Matthew take. And then there's a question on physics as well. So yeah, Matthew, you're seeing those questions. Feel free to.
Let me check the chat real quick.
Maybe we can go at the top, because I'm getting some direct ones as well. So I'll kind of just merge a couple questions. Mm-hmm. In terms of the practice exams, how many practice exams do you think should be done in the holidays? And also, what's the best way to go with an English exam if the prompt is something that you haven't actually done?
Okay, cool. So this answer might sort of shock you a bit, but when it came to if we're gonna, there's 2 types of things. There's the exams there's the essays throughout the year, and then there's a 3-hour practice exam. I did essays throughout the year. I didn't do any 3-hour practice exams. Now let me explain what I mean here. It was all purposeful. Now that was directly for my situation. For your situation specifically, this is what I'd recommend. I'd suggest first and foremost for English specifically, I reckon get yourself in probably like 3-hour practice exams, or like around 3-hour practice exams should suffice. Instead of thinking about it as a whole 3-hour practice exam, focus on each component. And like I said, if I'm going to be preparing for the English exam, I'd be making those documents, okay? And the key would be with regards to your adaptation. So how do you adapt your paragraphs to a random prompt? Now, if you've done every single possible prompt there is, I guarantee you will understand the underlying mechanics behind those prompts. You will understand the underlying sort of thing that they're trying to test you with these prompts. if we get back to that example with Tony, yeah, and the guy that was crying that I made up right before, right? The idea was about discrimination, okay? So if you get a prompt about discrimination, you're like, okay, easy. What if you get a prompt about human connection? Oh, whoa, that's a bit weird. You know, you've done a bunch of discrimination prompts and it makes sense, you know, you've got everything ready, but then you get a prompt about, you know, human relations. Mahdi's book explores the destructive effects of, or the powerful nature of human relations. Discuss. You're like, oh no, I'm stuffed, I can't adapt. Well, what you need to do is have a bit of a think of what these paragraphs are trying to achieve in essence. So your first paragraph maybe is talking about why it's really bad to discriminate against others. Okay, well, if we're talking about why it's bad to discriminate against others, and then we have a thing about human relationships, you just think, okay, how do we link them? Well, if you discriminate against others, you can't form a human relationship. So you can just merge human relationships into your paragraph very, very easily. Does that make sense? So you can just be like, you know, Mahdi underscores that once you discriminate against others arbitrarily, you are unable to form a sincere human connection, full stop. If you get a prompt about, okay, Mahdi's book explores hierarchies, explores the destructive effects of hierarchies. Okay, you have a thing about discrimination. Well, why do people discriminate? They discriminate usually because sometimes they think they're on top of an artificial hierarchy. Okay, Mahdi explores, or Mahdi underscores, that when an individual perceives themselves as above one another in the hierarchy, they will discriminate against others, full stop. You know, like that's what I'm saying. If you've done all the actual, if you've looked through all the prompts, you'll be able to do what I'm just showing you right now. Because if you've done like 50 of them, you know, you get 51, maybe it's dodgy, but you will be able to find that underlying similarity. The reason why we're asking this question right now is because we haven't been able to find the underlying similarity because we haven't started this yet. But I'm telling you right now, if you actually begin doing it, you will see the similarities, as I've showed you in the 3 examples.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Thanks,
Did I
Mahdi.
address both questions?
No, that was really good. I think there was also another question while I was in English. How did you tackle the exam in terms of sections? A, B, C, did you do language analysis first, text response first? How did you go about it?
So the thing you're probably going to hear from most people is to do CAB. So this is the stock standard advice is start with section C, do argument analysis because that's the newest thing you'll ever see. That's, you know, you're going to read a new article on the spot and then you need to write a response on the spot. So spend that time, your brain's fresh, spend that time focusing on section C. Then you'll be told to move to section A, text response, then do comparative. What I did was, instead of doing CAB, I did CBA because you start off with section C, obviously, which is argument analysis. You've never been exposed to this article before, so you want to get that done first in around an hour. Try and get it done in less than an hour. Try and do it in like 56 minutes if you can. Just like even like 30 seconds earlier would be really helpful, because once you finish section C, you'll go to the biggest essay you're going to write, which is section B. Section B, comparative text response. You're doing 2 texts and you're comparing them like Ransom the Queen or something. It's huge, right? The reason why I did section B after is because there's so much you want to write, especially if you've got it all in your head, that if you left it to the end, you're probably not going to finish. So you'd rather write and flesh that out and finish in like an hour, maybe above an hour 5 minutes. You can even go to an hour 10 minutes. Make sure you give it justice, okay? Because most people, since they do it at the end, they won't give it justice. So when you're being compared to those students and you've actually given your response justice, you're going to do better. Then you go to section A, which is the shortest one, just like one book, and then you smash that out in 50 minutes. So that's how I went about it in the exam.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mahdi. I've got a similar question, but on the sciences. Somebody's asked, should we do long response and science subject first, or leave that to last? So you've got the big 10-mark questions.
I think that's more for a, correct me if I'm wrong and feel free to clarify, is that more so for psychology?
I think so, probably, yes.
Personally didn't do psychology. So I guess with biology in terms of MCQ versus SAQs, I personally did MCQs first just to kind of, reduce my nerves, get into questions that I know I could, to kind of just build a little bit of confidence. So I kind of just did it normally like that. I know some people who did do SAQs first, but I feel like I might waste too much time writing a lot of answers to the SAQs and then not pick up the easy marks that I could with MCQ. So I don't think there's a clear answer as much as English. I think English, I had a very clear, go for C first and then A, B in my time, because B was the shortest essay back then, but now it's probably one of the longer ones. So I like Mahdi's idea of going back to front, really. So I know that didn't really answer your question, but that's all I've got for that one. There was a question that came up about physics, getting 45 plus physics at this stage. One thing I'll say about physics is almost identical to further in terms of extremely repetitive and extremely repetitive and competitive because of that. And I probably didn't realize that until after I'd done my physics exam, that they're very, very strict on, like, you drop a couple marks and, you drop a lot of study scores. So I was fortunate enough to get a 47 in physics, but the marks that I dropped were some of the dumbest mistakes I've ever seen. So one thing I'd say is with physics, be really, as with further, be very, very, very careful when you're checking your answers, when you're doing any calculations. Just check your units, double check them, just a really quick cursory check over, because you say you're going to come back to it, but you probably won't. So even with further, I just remember this now, when I did a question, I'd probably double check it in the question itself rather than coming back to it later on. Because when you come back to it later on, you're just like, can't really be bothered, right? So yeah.
Could I just add on to that? With regards to maths or physics, or subjects like those, this is what my teacher always told me. And I think it's so useful because it happens to people all the time. Read the question and then read the question again, and then do the question. And once you're done, read the question again. Because it's happened to me so many times where I'll read the question, I get really hyped, and then I'll do the working out. Then I finish it. I'm like, yeah, all right, done. And then I haven't even finished the question because I haven't answered it at all. So be really, really
100%.
careful about that. Yeah.
And the 2 of the marks that I dropped in my 2 out of the 4.5 marks I dropped in my physics exam was question for those who know physics. It's, why does light behave like a particle? And I just wrote the answer to why does light behave like a wave? Like the completely up. I don't know why, but if I'd done that, then that would have been that. But 6 years later, and you can see I'm still holding on to that. But I've since let that go. But I think it's really important just to be very, very careful, and also your units as well. And the other thing, I think getting 40 in physics isn't too difficult, because if you do enough practice exams, the questions are going to come up. You'll get into the good habit of it. Even if you're not comfortable with it now, do questions, get them wrong, learn from the answers, learn from the revision process. I think going from 40 to 50, that is where your written solutions come into it, or your written answers. And those ones need a little bit more fleshing out in terms of, linking, very much keeping it within the world of the question rather than just making bold conclusions.
I've got a few questions coming through. Let's see. So
whilst we're pulling that, just quickly, guys, you might have noticed I'm sharing the QR code. That's a link to a form, and through that form, you can either get added to our mailing list or inquire about private tutoring in the next month. We also have like essay packages if you want people to read over your essays and things like that. So that's there if you want to kind of keep engaged with us. And we also have more exam ready classes as well in the next week or 2. So keep an eye out on our Facebook, Instagram pages for those classes. Awesome. Sorry, Teba, go on.
No, all good. How many hours should you study per day for an upcoming exam without burning out? And is studying for the gaps worth it? I think maybe I'll just start with that in terms of how many hours study per day. Not necessarily the number of hours, but when you study. I think it's important to recognize when is your peak, when you study, when you're the most productive. A lot of people have this thing where we should all be morning people. We should all be people who wake up, like all the productive people wake up at 5 a.m. and smash out study sessions then. I'd probably like to challenge that and first recognize when your most productive times is, and then plan your schedule around it. I am a morning person, but I know a few people who aren't and who just do smash out so many things later at night. But yeah, Rafiq, we can start with you. How many hours a day did you study?
This is such a bad question because I always give the wrong answer. Because I didn't really study too much in high school. Not because I chose to. I guess I was just sort of procrastinating, things like that. But what I found really helpful was, even now actually, I psych myself into enjoying something. So I actually had 2 assignments. One was due today, one is due, not today, yesterday. One is due next week. And while I was doing the assignment due yesterday, I was like, all right, once I get this assignment, I can do the fun one. Now, I'll be honest, it's not that fun. It's still an assignment, right? But by psyching myself into thinking it was the fun one, and once I was done with this one, I could get on to the next one. I'm actually more excited to do it. And I feel like, it's not as much of a burden on me. But in terms of hours, I'll be honest, I guess most of it was just exam practice at this point, not too much content revision. And I'll also say that I didn't do any practice exams except the ones Yusuf assigned me throughout the year. So my weeks leading up to the exam was writing a couple of English essays, but mostly revising that document, like Mahdi was saying, not a formal one, but I guess revising that content. So all in all, it didn't add up to too much of a burden on me. I would say maybe 4 hours at most. Like most days it was 4 hours, 5 hours maybe at max. And that was if I got an exam and I did really, really terribly at it. But besides that, no, I think never more than 5 hours.
Wow. I can't say the same, but what do you reckon, Yusuf and Mahdi?
I think initially, too many people are concerned about how many brutal hours they put in.
Yeah.
I was much more of a, as I mentioned, kind of work hard, play hard in terms of like blocks. And then I'd be very keen to kind of have circuit breakers. So what I mean by that is like I try to do, maybe an exam in the morning. Actually, to be honest, I always did my English stuff in the morning because I knew if I put it later in the day, I would procrastinate and not get it done. Whereas something like a methods exam or, I didn't really like I like physics. I like methods in physics. So whereas chemistry and English were the ones I had to get motivated for. So I do those things I didn't like early in the day, just so then I knew I'd actually get the things I liked later on in the day done. But I'd always have like, something in the morning, and then I'd have like a lunch break, a solid time off to then feel like, okay, I should get back into it. But rather than thinking I was going to smash out 6 hours straight and then have the night off, those 6 hours probably weren't going to be that productive. So then if I had a solid chunk of the day that was not study, I then could restart at night if I wanted to. Other small restarts was always showers. Like showers were, I'd always just like have a shower to freshen up so I can get back into things, go for a walk. Now at uni, I have a coffee, but I didn't have any caffeine during year 12. So maybe a hot chocolate. Yeah, I think having resets are a nice way of going about it. Mahdi?
I think the shower idea is really good. Because I've noticed I did that as well. I didn't actually conceptualize like what I was doing, but when you have a shower, you just get this like really like this fresh, you just feel fresh. You want to get in, do what you want to do. You sort of get this energy boost. Even having a phone call with someone, like pick the people you want to study with. Obviously, it's very important to pick quality people. But like studying with study with someone who actually helps you feel motivated and you help them feel motivated. That's a really good energy boost. I just wanted to address the other part of the question regarding the importance of the GATs. So with regards to the GAT specifically, look, there's 2 things I want to say. Firstly, it's not as important as you might think it is, but it is still important. I'm contradicting myself. Look, I know someone personally who got a 50 last year in further mathematics, 100 in the SACs, 100 in the exam, yet didn't get a Premier's Award. That was because of the GATs. So if you are aiming for like a Premier's Award or something like that, you'd probably want to do better in the GAT. But if you don't really care about any of that stuff and it's like literally you didn't even think about it, you don't really care about it, then GAT is not as important as you think. That's what I just addressed that. Oh, and one more thing as well. Sorry, what were you going to say, Teba?
Oh, no, continue.
With regards to further maths specifically, because that person I'm telling you about did well in further maths. That person did more than 50 sets of 2 exams. And he told me that he found a lot of it to be useless because the main thing that got in the score was, especially if you look at the history of like further maths specifically, they're making it harder as the years go on. Like from like 2015 to 2020, they just keep adding new weird questions every year. If you guys have looked through the exams, you probably realize that. So really, really crucial tip for further maths: look at the 2021 like trials and look at the weird questions, because they're going to come up in your exam, and make sure you know how to solve them.
Oh, thanks, Mahdi. I think the next question directed to you as well in regards to the whole the document with the way you've structured English and how you extracted all the prompts and all that. Somebody's wondering what exactly you put in that document. Let's give us a bit of an overarching structure.
Yep. So to just keep it quick, you put the ideas. So for example, the idea I mentioned before about the tears and the crying. So ideas inside your book. You look at the book that you're studying. Let's say if you guys, ransom's pretty common, you know, you look at the idea of the human connection, you look at the idea between one character and another character. Think of, or like with that Tony idea that I gave, you know, the idea about tearing up, the idea about holding hands, the idea about basically look at events and make those events into ideas with quotes and analysis, little chunks, like a little paragraph, a little like 5 lines. That's the first thing you'd put in your document. So quotations, and then flesh out the quotes and put the author, what the author's trying to say, what the words in the quote mean, and then combine them into a paragraph. So the content would be events, and make analysis out of those events and those quotes.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I've got one last question, unless someone else is getting a question I've missed something. Someone's asking, how do we manage studying UCAT for those trying to get into medicine with VCE in place and trying to balance out the two?
I'll take that one. I had a similar question or issue in terms of when I was in year 12, I was studying for the UMAT back in those days. To be honest, I think with these kind of exams, I'm currently now one of the lead tutors for the GAMSAT. So I've got a lot more experience now, but when I did it back then, the UMAT, or, you know, the UCAT, I approached it like my kind of school study in terms of, you know, thinking that I can, if I started studying for like a year and a half beforehand and stuff. But in all honesty, probably the best way to study for the exams is a bit more of kind of a burst model. In terms of maybe 2 or 3 months beforehand, really getting into that zone, because it's pretty much just a problem-solving exam. So burst models is a good way of going about it. So I assume it's a question from a year 11 student. So, you know, don't worry too much about it. I'd say obviously focus on getting hopefully good scores in year 11. Over the summer, I'd increase my familiarity with it, just understand what the exam is about, how it's different, what the different sections are, just that build that familiarity, maybe doing a bit of light study, but really kind of, you know, bringing up the gears in those kind of probably 3 months beforehand, I think is probably more than enough time to really get into it. And then, to be honest, in that month before it, like sure, SACs and stuff are important, but they're not really compared to the UCAT. Like if you're looking at like just quicker, also I just want to quickly put this out there. Whatever happens, guys, especially for the year 12 students, even if you don't get the score you want or you don't get into the course you want, it's totally fine. And I think I'll use this question to segue into final remarks. If you could talk to each of your year 12 selves today, what would you say to them? So this is what I'd say to Yusuf. I'd say you have a game plan and that's great, but if things don't work out the way you wanted them, then that's okay as well. Because just personally, guys, a bit about myself, I got 250s in year 11. Everyone's like, oh, Yusuf, you're going to get into Monash Med, you know, 5 years, that's what you're going for. And, you know, even though I was always very like humble and not trying to think too much of that, considering my situation, I thought I would do quite well. But it turns out with the UMAT, I got a good score overall, but I got 46 in one of the sections, which is probably dropping about 2 marks. And because you failed one of the sections, you know, there was no chance I was getting to Monash Med. So then I still got, you know, a 99.75. But in terms of my goal for year 12 to get into undergrad med school, I didn't get that goal, right? So then I had to go to Melbourne, do the GAMSAT, and then got in postgrad. But having gone through that journey now and a year off graduating, I can say that I can pinpoint 4 or 5 different things that wouldn't have happened if I went to Monash straight away. And whilst we have a bit of tunnel vision about what we want, there's always a bigger plan at play. So do the best you can, make the decisions that you can that's in front of you. But I think, as Teba said, a lot of the stress that we put on ourselves is thinking that this year is the be all or end all, when I can tell you it definitely isn't. even if it, you know, in my situation, I was like, you know, you say that, but Yusuf, it means you're going to waste 2 more years of your life. Like what a terrible situation. But honestly, those 2 years and the people I've met along the way and the opportunities I've had have set myself up to you know, make lifelong friends. You know, I met my wife that I don't know if I would have if we were in the same course, because she went to Monash. You know, maybe she would have just friend zoned me straight away. Like, you know, the things happen along the way that you just don't know. So do the best you can. Really put in a lot of effort in the next, you know, 6 weeks or so. And the only thing I'd say to that, Yusuf, is don't get to the situation that you're in the middle of November and you wish you'd done more. You don't want to get to the situation when you get your mark and you're like, and you know you could have worked a little bit harder. I just think, you know, you've got 3 months after year 12 to watch as much Netflix as you want, go out with as many friends as you want, completely not do a single bit of work. But in those situations when, like, you know, you can work a little bit harder, but you just go on your phone and waste time, like, it's those micro things day in, day out that will add up. So just put in that little bit more work and just think 6 weeks, work hard, also play hard, have time off, but you just don't want to regret things down the track. And honestly, guys, whether you kind of come on board with us that have, you know, with private tutoring or not, where once we say once part of the Happy Brain family, always part of the Happy Brain family, feel free to email us, get in contact with us if you just want to chat, because we know it's a very, very tough time, especially with lockdowns and things. So definitely reach out if you're struggling, and you just want to talk to somebody if you're stressing with things. But I'd say things will work out okay, regardless of what score you got. Like I went and did Melbourne Science. I could have gotten into that course with an 87, and that's not the score I got, but I still don't think it was a waste of time, because I learned so many great skills along the way, and that held me in good stead as well for uni. So do what you can, but know it will be okay. Just, you know, just try and reach as much of your potential that you can. That's my final words of advice. Rafiq, what would you say to year 12 Rafiq on the 25th of September?
No, 25th of September. I was probably not studying, if we're being honest. But even then, I think, like, be very serious and be very honest with yourself, because I know that when I was in school, until I guess like the last moments right before the exams, I was like, have I really done enough? Did I really achieve what I wanted to achieve? And it wasn't a particular score, it was just, did I do the best that I can? So be very honest to yourself. And eventually at the end, I tried my best for a lot of things that didn't pan out, and I didn't try my best for a lot of things that did pan out. And so I think that's kind of something that you have to get used to, that you can try your best, you can have a brilliant plan that's like completely foolproof, and it doesn't work out. And sometimes that's not on you, you know? So that's the first thing, I guess. Don't be too stressed. And I can say on that note, the first time, I guess, this sort of realization came to me was when I was in year 11. I had a very clear idea what course I wanted to do, which was pure maths and actuarial studies. And right before I entered, right before it was sort of application time and things like that, for the VTech, I found out that that course wasn't offered. Like the year that I was applying, it wasn't offered anymore. And that sort of hit me like really hard, because I thought, oh, I've got this brilliant plan, you know, I'm doing all these maths, I'm getting sort of psyched to do that. And then it didn't pan out. So I think if it was me, I would say, yeah, just try your best, but at the end of the day, relax. There's lots of things that you can't control. Teba?
Thanks. That's really inspiring to hear. I think if I would go back in time, I would just tell myself to just take it easy on myself. I think I was very, very harsh on myself in terms of I need to get XYZ done, and the world will end if I don't get XYZ done. And it's kind of that mentality of, you know, it's all or nothing. The 12 is the end of the world. And I had a lot of university students tell me, like, it's just the beginning. And I just like, no, you don't understand. If I don't get the ATAR, and I wanted to get into medicine as well. But it actually, you know, I think it's very easy to be harsh on yourself. It's very easy to be very critical. And sometimes constructive criticism is really important for you. So you're being really clear on what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. But it's also, you know, that element of taking care of yourself, giving yourself some space, doing things that's purely for you are equally important, whether it's slotting in a workout, going for a walk, watching a movie. It's as equally important. And yeah, be open to what life has in store for you after year 12. I definitely did not envision myself being in this stage where I'm completely straying away from medicine and heading into the construction and civil engineering sphere. And I've never considered it in year 12, but it's something now I'm hugely passionate about, and I can't imagine myself being in any other space. So yeah, don't and I think it's easier said than done. I heard it previously and I didn't take it on. So I understand if you don't, but trust yourself, trust the process, you'll be fine. And yeah, like what you said, if you want somebody to chat to, whether it's about courses or careers or some more advice, feel free to reach out. You know, we're here for you. We're not just a tutoring company. I'd like to think it's like a better community or a family. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if you need any assistance. Mahde?
Alrighty, so I think what's been said so far by Yusuf, Teba, Rafiq, very powerful, really powerful hitting home messages. So I just wanted to emphasize something that's very important, and it's about being proactive in your life, not reactive. So this is like sort of a life thing as well to take from this, and use this right now in your studies for VCE, but don't wait for like, imaginary deadlines to just come out of nowhere and then you get stressed, right? Create the deadlines for yourself before they come. For example, VCE exams in 30 days, create that deadline, be proactive about it, take that action, make it earlier, conquer it. Think about how I'm going to, if you actually have that mentality of how am I going to possibly be prepared for this exam in 5 days, you'll find a solution. There's always a solution to any sort of obstacle you have. Now, also, proactiveness is also a humanistic thing as well. With your friends at school, if you have some sort of knowledge, anything, go speak to them about it. Go give them some sort of assistance. I'm telling you right now, even for me, my year 12, I spent most of my time with my peers explaining things that I was learning. Then I actually, yeah, definitely, even for English, most of my time was spent speaking with others about it than it was actually doing it. And what happens is when you can actually change someone in some aspect of their life and make them feel confident, you get this sense of urgency and this passion to keep excelling forward. You might be thinking, oh, if this person improves, they'll get closer to me and I can't do as well. That's actually not the case. If they improve, you get this urgency and you just go up to here. That's what happens. You just skyrocket. You get at you learn how to be content. You create this sort of happiness, this passion to study, this empathy. So the most rewarding thing, even for me in year 12, was, that document that I was telling you about? I helped some people make their own documents and they got in the 40s, even though their SACs weren't that well. So it was really rewarding for me. I felt better seeing them do well than me getting my study score. It's pretty interesting. So a way in which you guys can do this is right now with your friends, help them out. But even once you get into university, have this same mentality, go volunteer. That's what I decided to do. I popped into Happy Brain because I want to volunteer, because I know the power urgency has and passion has in shaping your own future. So whether it be coming to private tutoring at Happy Brain or volunteering in the refugee program, there is a variety of opportunities here and at any other organization to undertake. You'd rather have your confidence here and your preparation here than your preparation here and your confidence down here or here. Okay. So the goal is, if you want to get that confidence up here before you go into your exam, you need to have this empathetic mindset where you want to help people. And what better way than to get involved whilst you're in the most stressful period of, your year 12 journey or year 11 journey or year 10 journey.
Thanks, Mahde. I think that's a beautiful way to end it. I think we were a little bit over time. What do you reckon, Yusuf? Should we end it here?
Yeah, I think we should. I'm just going to quickly share. There was a couple of questions coming privately to me about why I chose Melbourne Science, and that's definitely something that we can chat about further. Or I don't. Maybe. Yeah, why science over biomed? I'm going to put in my email into the chat. If anyone would like, I wrote like a blog. I don't think we can put files into this thing, can we?
No, I don't think so. Maybe.
Sorry. I'm going to just put my email in the chat. I've been trying. I'm just not sure how that's not working. Let me just try drag it over. No, it's not working. Yeah, it looks like you can only put like Google.
Is it a Google Doc? Maybe you can put a link.
No, it's just like a normal file. That's okay. I'm just gonna put my email down. If anyone would like to, I wrote like a little blog about why I chose science over biomed. By all means, shoot me an email, or even, you know, we can as Teba put earlier, fill in this form and we can have just a 30-minute chat about kind of pathways to med school, if anyone would like that. Cool. I don't think there's anything else. Any questions? We've been doing that. But yeah, if you, as we mentioned, if you'd like to keep involved with us with our mailing list, or you want to get some private tutoring in the last month, or you just want to kind of get involved with us beyond. I know a lot of you guys in year 12, and I got involved with Habbrain when I was in first year, and it's just incredible. You know, you're going to meet some really, really genuine good people, and you know, it's also a side thing, and it's a nice thing to have, you know, to talk into interviews and things, and you just kind of, it's just, you learn a lot of cool skills. So can't recommend it any more highly, or just getting involved in general. I know myself, some of my friends were a bit hesitant to get involved with things in first year, saying they just want to focus on the studies and things. But as I said, I think we waste a lot of time, and there's enough time in the week and the day to be able to, you know, do community work as well as, you know, do your own studies. So, but yeah, thank you all so much for coming along, and on your great questions. Really, really great initiative of you guys jumping on a Saturday. So very well done. Keep an eye out for the other exam ready webinars. They do have a small price associated, about $15, I believe. But all these webinars are going to be focused on not just kind of running through content like most webinars do, but really on that kind of approach mentality, how to you know, take a concept, for example, in the biology one, take a concept and then how to write the answer accordingly, correctly, because a lot of people know about photosynthesis and stuff, but they can't, you know, write and apply that knowledge to questions. So that's kind of the vibe in which we're going for. Further is a similar vibe in terms of answer, you know, writing questions as well as at least psychology as well. So there's a few out there. Keep an eye out for it. And yeah, thanks again, guys, for coming along. And you know, like our Facebook page, like our Instagram page to keep up to date. And yeah, would love to have, you know, all of you come back next year for those who are year 12s and get involved in a big way or a small way. We've always got openings for you all. So thanks, guys. Any final words from anyone?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we might leave it there. And thanks to everyone else on the panel. Really enjoyed hearing all your thoughts as well. So have a good weekend, guys, and stay safe.
Thank
Take care
you.
of yourselves, everyone.
Everyone.